one very key intellectual conversation when we are discussing issues on military history, when we are discussing strategic studies and international humanitarian law is the laws of war. Of course, there is no doubt about the fact that war has existed throughout human history, from ancient tribal conflict to modern global wars. We have had experiences of serious crises, wars across all civilizations. Okay? One very key thing, like I mentioned, is that in wars recently, the international actors have decided to draft regulations, to draft rules that will be guiding the conduct of war. And that is what is known as the laws of war. And the laws of war are actually designed to, to reduce unnecessary suffering when war is going on. The laws of war are designed to make sure civilians and non-combatants are protected. The laws of war are designed to regulate the conduct of soldiers during warfare, and to also preserve human dignity even during armed confrontation. Okay. The question is, what is laws of war? Laws of war simply means set of international rules and conventions that regulate the conduct of warfare, the treatment of combatants and civilians, the laws that regulate the use of weapons, which weapon is right to be used, which one is not supposed to be used, how are the prisoners supposed to be treated, and the occupation of territories. What do you do? For example, during the most of the 19th centuries, when Yoruba was in war against itself, one very key thing that looked funny to people was that because there were no standing military, those who serve as soldiers then were also the critical stakeholders in agricultural activities in our societies. So when it is rainy season, the two parties or the parties involved in warfare, they decided that, okay, once it starts raining, let us suspend the fight and go into war. And go into farming. So that is a regulation. That was the law that governed their own war in most of the 19th century. You can see. What I'm trying to say is that the laws of war, especially in today's strategic studies, is there to ensure the conduct of, warfare in a way that civilians are carefully treated. Civilians are not, attacked unnecessarily. Some dangerous weapons, some chemical weapons, some biological weapons, some dangerous nuclear weapons are not used in certain, ways. And prisoners of war are also given fair treatment. Even historically, um, ancient societies, they had rules that limited brutality during war. For example, in ancient India, there is something that is called prohibitions against poisoning weapons. There is also what they call in Greek city states respected truces during religious festivals. Like, you can fight war, but once it is time for religious festivals in Greek city states, the parties should suspend their conflicts and respect the sanctity of that period. And apart from that, Islamic military traditions also prohibited killing women and children. And they also prohibited destruction of crops when there is war going on. You don't destroy farm produce. And you must not harm religious leaders. Yes, that is to tell you that throughout ages there has been respect for certain things and individuals when war is going on. And apart from this, during the medieval period, you know, there was a Christian just war that emerged, where they said religious authorities must try to limit violence. Yes, before you now talk about the modern development, when the international actors in the international community decided to limit certain actions during the war by drafting some treaties, and they signed those things. For example, the Geneva Convention in 1864. Apart from the Geneva Convention, we also have a Hague Convention of 1899 and 1907 that spell out the right of neutrality of states among other factors. Okay, let me go straight to a very critical issue anytime you are discussing the laws of war, and that is no other thing but a theory propounded in this respect, and it is called just war theory. You must have heard about just war theory. It is one of the most important ethical frameworks that concern warfare. Those who propounded the theory include Saint Aquinas, Saint Augustine and Thomas Aquinas. Just war theory can be summarized or was discussed under three parts. The first one was justice before war. Saint Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, they argued that if authorities must go into war, they must be fought. Those wars must, be for legitimate reasons. You don't just go into war. You can only go into war for nothing but self-defense. That's very key. Number one, if you must go into war, it must be for self-defense. And it is only legitimate authorities that has the right to go into war. Individuals, groups of people cannot just go into war except they have the audacity, the authority, the support of the government. But in most cases, those who are eligible to go into war are supposed to be the government. And the government must go into war for right intention. The aim of government declaring war against states or societies or groups should be for peace and justice. And they must not just go into war because they want to do revenge. And apart from this, the war, if they must fight it, has to be the last resort. What do I mean by that? You must have explored certain measures. You must have seek mediations. It is when you try to talk to the other party, try to reconcile, and they are not listening to you. That is when you now do what? Choose to go into war. And you must not even dream of going into war if you have not done your calculations and see that you have the possibility of achieving success if you go into that war. Before you go into war, you must have weighed your options and ensure that this war is going to favor you. If you see possibility of you losing the war, then it is advisable you don't try going into such a war. And apart from this, you must expect, successes, or what I mean by expected benefit must outweigh destructions. It is one thing to succeed in war. It's another thing to make losses. You may win a war and lose a lot of soldiers in the war front, lose a lot of resources. You have to do your calculation and make sure that before you go into this war, you must calculate that, look, if at the end of this war, what I'm going to gain is not up to what I'm going to lose, then you don't go into war. The second part of this just war theory is what we call justice during the war. Justice during the war is very key. What that means is that in the course of fighting a war, the parties involved in such war must ensure one, protection of civilians, two, proportional use of force. That is, one person should not be using arrows, AK-47, while the other person is using missiles. No. People should use weapons proportionally. Then the third one is humane treatment of prisoners, especially POW, prisoners of warfare. Very important aspect of this theory of war is justice after war. It is also expected that after wars have been fought, there must be justice done to the parties. For example, it is very important for reconstruction to take place so that you can rebuild the places that were destroyed during the war. And again, you must not only do reconstruction, you have to also go an extra mile to do reconciliation. You bring parties to the table and speak to each and every one of them. And again, you must address war crime trials with justice. I mean, if you found any parties, individuals to have committed an offense, or somebody have done something extraordinarily wrong in the course of the war, you don't just assume and you do punishment erratically. No, you have to do it based on what the person has done. The trials must be fair, open. It must address justice to the last level. The question, therefore, or the next very important thing that we can also address is the importance of the laws of war. Why should there be laws guiding the war? Why should there be rules and regulations guiding a war? It is a war and it is declared as war. Why should we now be guided? Why should we be within the confine of a particular law if we must fight ourselves? Those who propounded this theory argued extensively that, look, one of the most important reasons why there must be laws guiding war, if war is to be fought at all, is because human dignity must be protected. That's number one. Protection of human dignity. And number two, the reason why laws must guide a war is so that we can reduce unnecessary suffering in human society. Because if we just go into war, declare full-scale war, and everybody is just fighting without restriction, without regulation, then there's a problem. Human dignity will not be there. Humans will suffer. And this law also helped in promoting accountability. And it encouraged civilized conduct in wars. And apart from this, there will be limitation in destruction. Another very key important reason for having laws of war is to facilitate post-war reconciliation. I am very sure everybody know that even if the war is fought for 100 years, the end of it will always be reconciliation. And if you want to arrive at or achieve true reconciliation, you must achieve restriction. You must have restraint when you are fighting a war. Then the question is, can these laws of war actually be enforced? For example, when they say, okay, if you don't pay school fees in LASUED, you can't write exam. That's a law. The people that will enforce this law are the university lecturers and administrators. Now, if they say, okay, when we are fighting a war, you don't use a particular weapon. You don't kill civilians. You don't kill women. You don't kill children. You don't kill vulnerable population. Who will be on ground to ensure that you follow this law? That's a number one problem. And that is always the major criticism against this, theory by Thomas Aquinas and Augustine. Okay, you are saying that when you are fighting a war, let there be rules and regulations. Who will now ensure the maintenance of that rules and regulation? Even if you say that, okay, government across the world should do it, the mechanism for enforcement is always very weak. And another big problem is that powerful countries sometimes, they will just do things and evade punishment. For example, in recent times, we have heard about how South Africa took US to court of law for what is happening in the Middle East. Has US been punished for it? No. That's a big issue. And again, even if all the government agencies declare legitimate wars and they try to, follow the rules that guide the war, the conduct of the war, what of the non-state actors? Okay, Boko Haram is declaring war against Nigeria. Are you going to tell Boko Haram to observe certain policies, to respect civilian population, to respect women, not to attack children? This law cannot be implemented, especially when you have all these non-state actors like terrorists going into war against government. They will just do things erratically. They will do things without respect for all these laws of war that has been espoused. And apart from that, humanitarian laws may even be difficult to enforce during civil wars. For instance, when Nigeria was at a war against the Biafrans between 1967 to 1970, of course, humanitarian laws across the world has been there, and one of the core principles is that you don't invade or attack the vulnerable population. I mean the children and the women, especially including civilians. But unfortunately, when the government of Nigeria was advised against the Biafrans to cut the source of food supply to Biafran land, a lot of the children in Biafran land, became hungry and developed kwashiorkor, and they couldn't find food to eat, and government did nothing about it. So the laws of war was never applied because, and the summary of this whole thing is that the laws of war, as espoused by Aquinas and this guy, was only in theory and is never and can never be practicable. Thank you very much.